Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Beyonce Tyus. I am the Act Now and Youth Program Coordinator. Thank you for coming to our multicultural conversation for the month of December. This conversation is titled Let's Talk: How Male Representation Opens Discussion for Black Men's Mental Health. I will be joined by Ralph Patterson, who is Griot Media founder and Any Little Thing contributor. He works with his wife, Zelda Patterson, with Griot Media and Any Little Thing as well. Next slide. So, just to introduce Act Now stands for African American Community Together Now. We are a multicultural program of NAMI, New Jersey. There are four of us serving NAMI, New Jersey's residents. We specifically serve all 21 counties of New Jersey, the African American communities. And we connect New Jersey's African American families that are affected by mental illness, as well as individuals with mental illness. And we connect the faith communities and mental health professionals, and we work to provide information and resources as well. Quick disclaimer before I give Ralph the floor. The views, thoughts, and opinions shared by our presenter are not the views, thoughts, and opinions of NAMI New Jersey or Act Now. They belong solely to him. You can reach us at our email at actnow@namiandj.org, our website, and our social media, which is right there, as well as our phone number. Next slide, please. And before I hand it off to Ralph as well, you have a chat option. If I'm talking too fast or if you can't hear what Ralph is saying or something, please put it in the chat. We have Jenny and Viviana monitoring it, so what you say will be read and we will be aware of any technical issues, questions, or comments. Okay, and Ralph, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Okay. All right. I guess we go to the next slide. Just to let you know that my background is in broadcasting, and my wife's background is as a psychiatric nurse. So my own struggles with emotional health left me without the tools I really needed to help myself. The men I looked to were stoic. They did not have, they weren't open and vulnerable. That is to say, to have a real conversation with somebody did not seem possible at that time. So I spoke with my wife because the conversations in our house are very open because of the work that she does, and we decided that uh, we should be doing we should be using our skills, marrying our skills beyond marrying ourselves, marrying our skills in order to give back something. And so we took her storytelling. She's also a playwright, and we took mine, and we blended it together to form our company uh, to produce health related media. Uh, if we can go to the next slide. I should say before we go forward that I realized that using media, I came to realize that using media uh, smoothed the path for a lot of people uh, who were guarded about talking about sensitive topics around mental health. Most people, a lot of people, I should say, feel that mental health and emotional health, the things that a lot of us encounter, are character flaws when in fact they are not. And there is a medical path uh, that can be used in order to achieve healing and management. So there was, in this slide, we talk about the disparities in mental health services. And part of that is associated with uh, our own, as a culture, as an African American man, our cultural perspective uh, on mental health being a character flaw and something that other people engage with and not us. And perhaps the next slide. this is a stat from 2019. Um, there are a lot of people represented here in these percentages who do not uh, who who received mental health in that time, but there are a lot of people who did not, and a part of that has to do with our perspective on mental health. Uh, each one of the people who did receive the help not only helped themselves, but their health impacted the lives of their family and their friends. You know, but how many are managing to talk? Uh, how many are really managing to talk about mental health uh, with people that they know in their circle? Perhaps the next slide. Regarding mental health education and emotional wellness, we are impacted by many societal problems, including past and present traumas, as well as sometimes low levels of income for many families. Um, uh, so far, it costs to get the to get a lot of health, mental health, and it's not a choice that some people are willing to even broach to engage with. They just think that it's prohibitive. But there are other paths. There are groups, there are offerings, and then there are paths to get if you need if you need to get the uh, professional therapy. There are paths to get uh, um, help on either a sliding scale, I imagine, or free. But we do suffer with personal traumas, historical traumas, and public traumas like unfair police, witnessing unfair police actions, school shootings. All of this happens while we're trying to move forward with our lives normally. And the next slide, please. As I said before, police actions against unarmed people and school shootings come at us at a rate that might not allow us to heal in between those experiences. The repeated incidents of violence towards people of color and Black men in particular, and the necessary coverage of these incidents exposes us to witnessing these horrific events and gives rise to us being re-traumatized. It's too easy to look at a thing more than once uh, when it's recorded. Uh, if we've lived it, then that becomes it becomes repeated in our minds. But it's too easy to do that. We have witnessed witnessed these events in social media, articles online, and in broadcasting, and the range is massive. Um, and it's not the act of sitting in front of you of a box in your living room and watching something on the screen. It's in your hand, and it's a thing that is um, all the media there is pretty seductive. The act of watching media there is pretty seductive. That can be a positive, as I see it, but can also it needs the balance. You can witness things over and over again that are traumatizing, but there is an opportunity in that little thing held in your hand to launch discussions around uh, mental wellness and emotional wellness. The next slide, please. If we have a support group, a support network that allows for real unguarded talk, then we are at an advantage. The coping strategies we have practiced and collected over time become a part of who we are, regardless of what the coping strategies are. Uh, if we don't have a supportive group or an outlet that is helpful, then uh, we may resort to behaviors that soothe us in the moment, but cost us over time. The next slide, please. What if the strategy of always presenting as strong, stoic, or invincible worked against us? And that's what the thing uh, that we found challenging for African American men to be guarded invincible, to present as invincible often, uh, and to not show weakness, um, because to show weakness and vulnerability is allows for exploitation, and there has been a history under racism, a history of exploitation that put us as Black men and women on guard. The next slide, please. One study showed that 60% of Black people believe that a mental health condition is a sign of personal weakness, as I've said. As a result, many experience shame about having a mental illness and worry that they may be discriminated against due to their condition. This is a huge hurdle. Um, I like to think in the last few years, I think under COVID and under some of the larger personalities coming out and talking about the fact that they are also on the journey of mental health and maintaining it even before they get to a point of a trauma, that the language is becoming more and more normalized, and that's a hopeful thing. That is a hopeful thing. The next slide, please. So the big question is, what does it take to put aside the fear of stigma? Next slide, please. Here's how I think it might work. Here's how we think it might work. At the base of creating emotional wellness is acknowledging when you are hurting. Big, especially big for men. Uh, my own therapist uh, explained to me, or said, or commented that men have a tendency to be um, not as verbal in explaining where they are, where they are, where they are emotionally, and uh, like to get to the point as opposed to, uh, I'll say, being uh, using a lot of verbiage. Um, but if you're in a safe space, I won't say verbiage. If you're in a safe space, that kind of conversation promotes healing. Acknowledging you are at a place in your life that that support is needed is another step. Accept that addressing that need is a part of self-care, and the fact that self-care is not pampering but empowering. That's another issue for uh, for men. I still fight the idea of of self-care. I shouldn't say fight. I still work with the idea of self-care on on not much so much on mental health, but on just physical health. I guess yes, th- there is a bridge there. Um, to take time away. Every moment doesn't have to be forced into being where you have to produce something. Uh, Acknowledging that you're not a machine, taking time for yourself, doing something that requires no judgment. There's no outcome except for your own satisfaction. Um, I think is key. Some people have hobbies, some people volunteer. Uh, all of that is important in self-care. The last point here is understanding this. We thought to employ media to get the message out. Media that we as Black people readily consume. Next slide, please. So using media to spark conversation. What if there was a form of media that was ever increasing in use and readily available over phone and internet? could that begin to answer the need? That was the question we posed. The next slide, please. According to Nielsen, the rating company, about 135 million Americans listen to podcasts regularly. That is up from 73 million just 6 years ago. Now, these numbers are from a couple of years back, so they may be increased even over this. Of those responding to a survey, among the 73 million, 15% were African American. We calculate that at about 11 million people. That is a significant number. Next slide, please. In a typical week, about half, 50% of African American podcast listeners, 18 years and older, spend about 1 to 4 hours listening to podcasts. That's an average. That means there are people who are listening less and some who are listening significantly more. We thought that was a great opportunity to see if there was some way to produce a podcast that would have a relatable story that would spark conversations about how the character was managing to get out of that predicament in terms of his mental well-being. Next slide, please. Of the various agencies we reviewed who deal with mental health, all reported an issue of stigma within the Black community at large. In a small survey we conducted in 2019, we found that there were 9 out of 31 respondents stated that within their own families, there was stigma associated with mental health treatment. That was nearly 1/3 of the room, and it seemed to us a significant number. It points to the hurdle an individual has to overcome within a group in which he has ongoing interaction. If Uncle Joe and Uncle Bob think that something is crazy or think that something is off or whatever term they might use, then it's very difficult to have a conversation with them about how you feel hurt or stuck or anything on that nature. Next slide, please. This points to the difficulty of speaking even with family members who embrace the stigma of mental health therapy. Yeah. If the norm within the family is to say, this is a character flaw, or this is something that you don't need to deal with, that we don't need to talk about, or you're wasting your time and money. This is not something that happens to us, is one of the oldest statements that I've heard within my own family, or parts of my own family. I wouldn't say all of it. That's something that happens to other people. Other people can afford to be mentally ill, okay? But we cannot. When in fact, everything that happens to us does register with us, whether we want to accept that or not. The next slide, please. So why media like Any Little Thing Matters? A dramatic serialized podcast allows us to make a surrogate for Black men to empathize with. This should make it easier to talk about issues through discussing the plight and victories of the story's character, smoothing the path, basically. You're not talking directly about me to begin, but when you share the story with other people, we believe that's at a point where insights can be found. The film a couple of years ago, last year, the film a couple of years ago, American Fiction had opportunities within that as well. The next slide, please.
Oh, Well, we're actually going to have a little discussion moment. So
Okay.
we have one of the episodes with us, everybody. And I invite you all to listen to it, and use the chat feature to drop your thoughts, questions, and if you relate to any of the feelings or thoughts or experiences that are in the episode.
Welcome back. Mitch Bryant and his wife see their circumstances very differently at this time of COVID. In our last episode,
The police car. Bitch, don't. Just don't. Stay calm. Look straight ahead. Keep your hands on the dashboard.
I know what to do. I don't have to bring that up. Karen, give me a call.
I will.
No, you won't. This is my sister, and this is my wife.
Bitch.
Is it still playing, Viviana?
Boo-boo. Uncle Kez.
Little man, they ain't letting you two have control of the back window yet? What the? Man, what are you doing? Why did you pull us over, man? I'm checking on how you treating my sister. Scared the crap out of me. Had me mad and scared at the same time. Sorry. That's the only way I can get your attention. I've been following you for blocks. I had the light on. You should have called your sister's cell phone. I did. It went to voicemail.
My battery's low.
Charge your phone, sis.
What's that, Dad?
I stopped by the church. Behind the cars blocking the street for the food pantries. I tried to move some of them over. It was getting heavy when we left. Gussie St. James ran out and forced a bag of antibacterial soap. Said she wanted to give it to you for your neighbor. Said you had just left. You go down there? Helping out some. Oh, I snatched this bag and got away from her as soon as I could. I tell you, that woman's out.
Don't start on my sweet church sisters.
Here, MJ, take this from your own. Ain't nobody on her. That's a problem.
There's a car.
You looking at me, MJ?
No, sir. What are you laughing at, Mr. Frunson?
Who's that? Let it go.
I thought you worked the night shift.
Well, let's see you took this. I don't have much time.
You got ice cream, Pop?
Annette, how come you ain't feed my babies popsicles? All falling down as parents. No, baby girls. Uncle bring you something next time I see you. You doing overtime now? No. Look, an officer on Dayside caught the damn COVID. Oh no.
You have to cover for him long?
I don't know.
They're short, huh?
Aaron, he didn't make it.
My God. Kevin, I'm so sorry.
Thing. Anything we can do?
No. You all are around each other all the time. Are you all right?
Look, don't run that way. I got tested negative. Y'all all right? Much as we can be. I thought you were pulling me over to ticket me or something. I feel good if that makes your day.
You got enough on our plate.
Don't we all? I gotta go home to an empty house. Sheila? She's just locked down with her mother. For her own safety, it's best we stay apart. Better for her. I got you. I wanted to save this for a better time. Don't know when that's gonna be. We pregnant. Get out of here. Congratulations, man.
I'm so happy for you. I know how hard y'all been trying.
Yeah, I'm on my own right now.
Oh, Kevin, I wish you could come home with us.
Nah, I'm not gonna put you all in risk. I got this. At least you all got each other some of your neighbors' soap.
Our soap.
Your soap? Why do you have to bring that up?
Because he's my brother. He's family. We're low on stuff.
How low? We're fine, man.
No, we're not.
Wait. What do you need?
Everything. Food, the rent is coming due. That
Why
soap.
didn't you say something?
Karen, stop. This is my family. You're taking care of yours.
No need to hide this.
I'm not hiding anything.
Keep moving. This don't involve you. I can't stop for long. Karen, give me a call.
I will.
No, you won't.
This is my sister.
And this is my wife.
Bitch, I gotta go. Look, you take care of her.
Don't I always? Give Sheila our love. I can help with this.
I don't need you for this. Put the bag down, Mitch. Blowing my brother off like that.
You're always running to your family. We can handle this.
Oh, yeah, we can handle it. It ain't that bad. I got it.
That's right.
Put the pasta on the top shelf. Shoving them all over.
Karen.
Look at this. Some canned vegetable pasta, no sauce. Did they have any meat?
I don't know.
No bread. There's no bread in here.
I'll get that later.
When? How? With what?
We got a few bucks. I'll get more.
Do you know how 4 people eat? No, you don't. Because I shop for the food.
Come on, Karen.
You come on. You should have told the church the truth. We would have got what we needed.
When they lift the ban on non-essential buildings,
You know what it's going to be?
it can't keep going like this forever.
Mom, I can help. Not now, MJ.
Go back upstairs.
I can hand you the cans. Not now, MJ.
Back upstairs. We're talking.
I called the distribution warehouse on Lake Street. They're looking for me.
Why did you do that?
We need money.
No, you can't do that.
Oh, I can. I can do that kind of work. It's just packing.
And come back here and put Nettie at risk? You don't know what's floating around in there. She's just now starting to breathe.
I'll
right.
stay with Kevin.
No, I don't want you doing
We
that.
need to do something.
Let's just wait. Give it a few days and let's
We don't have a few days, Mitch.
think. You're not going over there. You're not. He just jumps into this stuff. Looks nasty to me. He likes it.
Mitch. Mitch.
My phone. Levinson. Afternoon.
How can we manage the delicate balance between shame and trust, even within our own families? Let's talk about it. Join us for our next episode of Any Little Thing as we follow Mitch Bryant in his journey. more information on mental health and resources, go to
So that was the episode. I personally picked it out because I feel like it was a great way to understand some of the dynamics when it comes to Black men and mental health, especially with family. Um, I don't know if you guys heard, but in the episode, it's clear that he's struggling to afford things and pay rent and basically take care of his family. And for a lot of men, that's a hard point to talk about with anybody, on top of stress and other mental illness. So Ralph, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but you contributed some of your own experiences to Any Little Thing.
Yeah,
Um, can you share
sure.
how your personal experience is connected to it?
Well, the idea was that under COVID, there was no hiding place any longer. Men and women were husbands and wives spent a lot of time together, and so that was like a place where you were compelled to talk, or um, you'd have a conflict regardless. Uh, so we thought that would be a good place to start the story. Um, um, there are there is the idea of men being the provider was a theme that we wanted to explore because that's important for a lot of a lot of men, and the idea that for some men to to limit the woman's role as and in that as a provider. So there was there was him feeling that he was less than, like a lot of men might feel if they couldn't provide the very basic things, food, you know, and shelter being at risk. And so we thought that'd be a place to discuss to spark a discussion, uh, and and uh, and also he was also trying to somehow, not somehow, also he was the idea of modeling what manhood is for his son was always is always a part of of those themes for I would think most men's and examining his own so-called manhood and and confronting the idea that he may have to redefine that, you know. So that was my experience.
And then I also, for anyone that goes and listens to the podcast, the episodes aren't long like normal podcast episodes are long. That is done on purpose, to make it more digestible. And I'm gonna ask more about it later, but Ralph, when you and Zelda were working on the episodes and working on the script,
Mm-hmm.
um, did you find the shorter episodes to be more impactful, or would you have wanted it to be longer?
Well, there's as a writer, there's always a temptation to want to go long, but we're looking at the audience and looking at the opportunities to reach people and seeing how media is consumed. We looked at the idea of little short videos on Facebook and TikTok and all the rest. This is where people are in YouTube. This is where people are. The viewing habits has changed. We're not our grandfathers or my generation's uh, viewing habits going back. There's no appointment. You know, we don't race home to watch the show at a certain time. It's we pick it here. And so we wanted to smooth the path and make it as, what's the term I heard somebody use this morning, as frictionless as possible. And we thought, well, something short, especially for the men, because it's going to be, it's a difficult topic. Maybe they can get a couple of points out of it, and they have an opportunity to come back to it, knowing that it's not long. So that was a part of our logic.
And then just the other thing that I noticed between the podcast, this episode, and as well as the entire podcast, is the importance of faith, um, and how important it is for the community. Even in the episode, she mentions being honest with the church so the church can help out, and Mitch not wanting to. So could you speak more to that, if you could?
Yeah, was the idea of it was about faith, but it was about his integrity too. Um, it was, I think she was, I, I like to think she was hurt because this is not the man that she thought she knew, because he couldn't find it based on his own faith, based on his own faith experiences, to feel free enough to be open. And so he resorted to something that countered everything that he had been engaged in before, as far as his faith is concerned. And to have the community of faith uh, is significant. But regardless of your faith tradition, but to have that community is significant, because to not be alone uh, during adverse times is a powerful tool. And with Mitch working, basically kind of subverting that, um, it became complicated for their lives, for her at least, for sure.
So we do have a question in the chat. Do you have any tips on how to connect with men, since most men find it difficult to be vulnerable?
Uh, Beyond the media, um, I just recently uh, was invited to a men's group, uh, not to speak, but it gave me an opportunity to listen to other men speak. How to reach out to men? Well, there's a couple of ways. One is to reach out to the women in their lives, if they're heterosexual men or their partners, but to reach out to their significant others. Um, and um, my Zelda had an experience where she was at a salon, hair salon, and she was asked, "What is she doing?" "Oh, I'm working on this thing, any little thing." And so she played it for the operator, and they played it in the salon over Bluetooth. Now she has an audience, and now they undoubtedly were going to take that with them, and that's significant. Reaching out to men, um, we did this with our film, which had the same thing called the Stoic Man. We went to men's groups, already established groups. We went to a men's fraternity, and we showed the film. This is pre-COVID, and organized a discussion around that. Um, it is a challenge, no doubt. It is a challenge. In order to get that audience, we had to go and canvass people in the parks, at the basketball courts, wherever, to say, "Hey, come, listen, all that, have a discussion." Um, um, I don't have any um, direct prescription to reach out to men, but we are discovering it as we go along.
And next slide, please.
The idea was that men would bring issues from the podcast into discussion. Uh, if they heard any little thing, we would bring them into a discussion. What we found was that we could generate some guarded discussion, which over the course of the event became increasingly open. We had we had a grant to produce any little thing as a part of outreach to men, and we conducted a 4-month uh, um, online discussion, monthly online discussion, and each month had at least one episode of any little thing that led up to it. Um, and we brought people into a room, into the online room, and we had some success. Not the numbers that I'd like, because it is a difficult topic, but we did have some success. And I found that if allowed, men will talk. They'll always start off guarded. We will always start off guarded, but they will eventually open up. Next slide, please. And I believe there's audio with this slide. Well, I can tell you that we had we had we wanted to bring in uh, a Black professional therapist to speak to Black men, and we found the gentleman in the upper right hand corner. He's a psychologist, a psychologist, and he was able to help us moderate the discussion if somebody, to guide the discussion. Um, the other people in this is the uh, uh, first discussion group. What I came away with was that um, there is people were people actually tired of being guarded, which was a surprising discovery. Tired of being guarded, and they long for a place where they could be their authentic selves and be free. That is, uh, one of the gentlemen says that he was, master's level educator with, and he worked in education system, but when he wanted to feel authentic, he would go back to his neighborhood and be on the corner with the fellas, and he talked loud and 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 be happy and be open. And others found various ways of doing that, but the underlying theme was to find a place, find a network of people, make a network of people that would allow you to be who you are, so that when you enter the larger society, uh, you're not you're not burdened with the idea of having all this armor on and being guarded, but you in fact can go forward, and that is getting to that point. Any place along the journey of emotional wellness is the start of healing. And that was the outcome of that. I was very gratified for their conversations, very much so.
Feel comfortable in that space too because that's where I'm from. And I don't think as a black man you should lose that edge. Like you should experience growing up because there's very few people that understand you once you start to move above from where you started.
Thank you.
In order for us to get through this, we have to be vulnerable. Like we can't be vulnerable with anyone on the outside because for one, you know, we but one thing that you don't want people to see is that you don't have it all together. You don't want to work. I work as a professional in education, but I'd be lying if I didn't say like I still didn't have friends that hang.
That's that.
Okay. And that concludes the presentation. So now it's the Q&A section. We do have another question in the chat. It's about
If you value you value that relationship with the child, and in a later episode, I'm pretty sure we explored that because MJ was mirroring something that his father was not aware of that was happening with him, and it made him value his relationship with his son. He didn't want to lose out on that, so that caused him to not examine the altogether his emotional state, but he knew he didn't want to lose out on that relationship with his son. So he did move him towards knowing that he needed to do something different. Yeah. So I think the youth can do that. And I think the youth can, youth can help normalize the discussion more so too, because I think there's been a generational shift in which people tend to talk to or are more open about how they talk about their own emotional well-being. I think it's better. It's not all there, but it's better.
And then, so when it comes to working on any little thing or other projects like Stoic Man, has working on those projects impacted your own views on mental health or your own personal connection to it?
Yeah. Yeah, it has. Like I said, the men that I was able to speak to in discussion groups, and were offered a safe space to talk about what they were going through, they enlightened me about some of the things that I made some wrong assumptions about. The biggest thing was I thought a good significance of their uh, emotional health was around potentially a feeling of anger around the idea of pushing back against racism and economic worries and the rest. But a good portion of what they were concerned was they were tired of being emotionally guarded or having to put up this facade in order to move through the world, to present as invincible takes a lot of energy, and it doesn't have a lot of payoff. I mean, you get home at the end of the day, most of the time, but it doesn't produce much, and they wanted to be unburdened from that. And so I found out the various ways they were doing that, as was accounted in that little short video. It was their accounts of real world social networks, the barbershop, the fellows on the corner, the church, and the teams, leagues, and things they embraced that allowed them to be unguarded. That was a healing experience for me and for them.
And then I know you touched on it some in the actual presentation earlier, but when it comes to media representation, how do you see it pushing the conversation forward in the future
Sure.
or right now even compared to the past?
I believe that for cultural reasons, we don't talk about mental health, and we don't see or hear about people with lived experiences managing and dealing with mental health in the media on a level that that would serve us. If we don't see it, then how can we have a real conversation? So it needs to be created. At its heart, drama, radio, film, whatever, any type of drama is about people overcoming something. So we use that as a way to strike a balance between entertainment and reflecting on lived experiences. Recently, in the last year, the movie American Fiction, I felt was successful at doing that. We starred Jeffrey Wright, and you could see a fully dimensional person, or more fully dimensional person, going through struggles around his mother's demise, his own identity, and it was helpful. Most popular dramas depict men as warriors or predators or victims. This is me. This is my observation. I suspect that many adult men can discuss the plot of, like my son, my adult son, can discuss the plot of most Marvel movies, superhero movies. But what have they to discuss as regards men living real lives? The men I've heard from have emotional lives that are more layered than what I've often seen and heard. So I think there's still a lot of room to do that. It is a balance to be struck between, because you don't want to preach to anybody. People won't accept it. But if there's a lesson to be gleaned from something that is observed, then it's more readily held on to, I believe. So I think there's an opportunity for that with podcasts. I think there's an opportunity that with short films, and long films a little bit different, because long films are an event. They can do the same thing, but they're event, and they're very costly. You To make a podcast is not free either. If you're doing drama, actors have to be compensated, and things have to be made, but it doesn't compare to, trying to drive people into a dark room and put a picture in front of them. But there is an opportunity to be made by doing drama, I believe, and that's what we're pursuing.
Sorry, I was just reading the chat. Somebody dropped. Yeah, I think they dropped a statistic. Says studies have shown that Black Americans are 2.5 times more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, and are more likely to be diagnosed with schizophrenia, paranoid subtype, or schizophrenia undifferentiated. Sorry, my chat button is not undifferentiated subtype. The weaponization of medicine, easy psychosis. And they said their question is that is psychosis dismissed as drug use?
That's out of my lane. I can't answer that.
But how does, in media, for example, do you see, as someone who works in media and works in drama, how the strong connection between mental health and drug use? And
Oh,
is the topic of drug use kind of used to undermine a mental health conversation, or do you feel like it can be used to gleam on mental health?
I I I think, unfortunately, within the Black community, there's a perspective that any type of thinking uh, that falls outside of the norm is something that can be any kind of thinking, any kind of behavior that falls outside of whatever the norm is can be considered as uh, dismissible or assigned to your nature as a black man. You have a tendency towards da da da. They have a tendency towards da da da. You know, that type of thing. Um, when I see uh, when I see depictions of drug use in films, um, there is rarely, I cannot recall the last time I saw a discussion about how did you get here? What brought you here? You know, is there an answer to get you out of this? Not for black people. I haven't seen that. Or black men. I haven't seen that. So that is that type of attitude can be problematic. I see in trying to get, if that's held through, uh, if it filters into policy or opportunities to help people, it can be problematic. Yeah.
And then also, I think one of my final questions is when it comes to the symptoms of mental illness and mental health, particularly in regards to Black men, but just like the Black community as a whole,
Mhm.
how can other creatives who want to do podcasting or dramas or short films make sure that they're not highlighting symptoms that can easily be misread as stereotypical?
Hmm.
Versus, this is part of a mental illness this person's dealing with. This is not part of who they are because they are
Yeah.
Black, you know.
Yeah. I got you. I got you. Well, that is a challenge because there's a tendency in the way film writing and screenwriting and dramatic writing is taught to, especially commercial writing is taught to uh, distill a character down um, to something that will help move the plot along. Um, there is there's a challenge to our challenge is to make sure that we don't buy into that. We have to unpack it ourselves before we put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard. Uh, that understand that the person that we are this character that we are creating is is not a stereotype and must be able to have uh, both sides of their story told. And it's a challenge to do that. Uh, you also have to entertain to keep people engaged. Uh, so it's kind of tricky, but it's done and it is doable. And I think we've had some success in doing that as well.
And then we have a question actually from Jenny. It says, Ralph, do you have any advice or tips for newer generations on how to use the newer types of media like TikTok and Snapchat to enhance their mental health?
I don't at the moment. I would, I would, I would think honesty would be uh, uh, understanding that those type of media outlets can be addictive, and that when you put up something, um, that there has to be a level of honesty, even if it's a lot of it is play, uh, uh, but there is a level of honesty that you have to have so that uh, people come away with knowing that what they're consuming is um, has some meaning uh, beyond whatever the play that is involved in their presentation. Uh, things can be fun and should be fun, uh, but there is a need to have a balance so that I believe that people can be served. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that begins to answer some of that.
Yeah. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, and she said yes in the chat.
Mhm.
Okay. That was the end of my questions, and I don't see any more in the chat or in the Q&A box either. I want to just ask to end on like a positive note. What are your hopes for the conversation and representation with Black men in mental health as a creative and just also as a
Sure.
Black man yourself?
Sure. I want I want us to see that conversation as empowering at the base level. It is empowering and not a point of weakness. It is empowering to know where you are emotionally. It is empowering to accept that a small step can have meaning. It is empowering to uh, to serve people in a support group. Your sharing of where you are in a moment, you're listening to someone share where they are in a moment serves. It is, um, it can be humbling, it can be gratifying, and it is certainly necessary. I was in a group, uh, the NAMI group, actually, and a gentleman stood up to talk about he and his wife's issue with infertility. And I have adult children now, they're both adopted. But it brought me back to my experience, and I was able to share something with him. Um, and there were, there is, I want media to serve. This is me. Maybe I'm on a mission, but I want media to serve people. I don't. I think there's enough opportunities to be entertained, and but I think we can entertain and still serve. I definitely don't want to preach to anybody. I don't want to be top down to anybody with anything because I I don't need it, and other people kind of reject it as well. So if we can integrate the idea of 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 learning, uh, of sparking those conversations that we may never hear, but we plant that seed and we can spark those conversations, then I think we as creators can get the gratification out of making the story, and as for lack of a better term, as activists can get the gratification out of knowing that maybe we planted a seed that would help somebody down the way.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
This concludes our webinar. We're ending early, unless someone else has questions. But there will be a survey either after you log off or in your email within the next couple of days. And I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank Ralph for giving his time to do the presentation. And I want to thank Nami NJ as well for giving us the space to have the conversation. So thank you, everybody, and have a good day.
Thank you all.